Manoj, good of you to join us. Give us your basic take on this flood of cash going into Jio Platforms.
Thank you very much and good morning. Jio has transformed India in terms of the consumption of internet and mobility. In the span of less than maybe 4 years, we have seen the average consumption of data per capita increase to now potentially in the region of 30 GB per user per month, which places India amongst the highest in the world. And so what that does is it creates an enormous appetite for the consumption of a variety of digital services. Indian internet and e-commerce digital payments market is still at its infancy. So clearly, Jio has changed the way telecommunications companies operate, and they've set, many ways, a benchmark for the way global telecom companies need to transform to drive growth in their businesses. And in a first of its kind, it has invited partnerships and investments from the likes of Facebook. So to truly leverage on the tech giants' expertise to help further grow into adjacencies, adjacencies like commerce and payments, etc. And that is what is capturing the imagination and attention of global investors. Yeah.
Manoj, what are they actually buying here? And is it also essentially a bet of trying to get there early and hope that they can replicate a Tencent or Alibaba, but an Indian version therein?
That is precisely because, with Jio now, they have access to about 400 million customers. And as we know, Reliance is a very well-diversified conglomerate. They have also aspirations they have started playing in the retail space, and they want to build a rival to Amazon as well as Flipkart in India. So this investment is to create an Alibaba of India or a Tencent of India, and you can see the company has the potential to make that possible.
And Manoj, I mean, of course, there's likely to be other companies which will follow in and go into, let's say, the likes of Airtel and firms like Vodafone there as well. But tell me, what are the biggest dangers is regulation looking ahead? And we found that certainly in the telecommunications sector with taxes. Now, is that one of the biggest roadblocks, do you think, for people to invest in India? Because we just don't know what happens down the line, as the country has in the past shot itself in the foot.
Correct. But we must note that this investment is less into the telecommunications infrastructure, but more into the digital services and the future digital economy. The telecommunications is the foundation on which they are building the next generation of services. So yes, you are right. The telecom itself, and Jio themselves were responsible for this huge, pricing pressure that resulted in and so much of pressure on the operators and their ability to pay taxes. So I believe we are at the tail end of being able to resolve this and move ahead. Airtel is almost, now looking ahead. Vodafone still has some challenges in paying the past dues. But what the tech companies who are looking at potential investments in India, they see on leveraging this user base to sell better digital services. And it is less about what they can do in terms of connectivity and connectivity services.
Manoj, whether it is telecom or digital for retail for that matter, India's regulator has been a huge headache for businesses, especially foreign companies. I mean, what's the risk there?
Yeah, that is true. That, in recent times, particularly in sectors like retail, there is nationalism, protectionism to being given to certain local companies. So that is the risk that some of these investments carry. But nevertheless, you see from the perspective of global companies, for them in many ways, investments in China were not possible, whereas India is far more open. So they do not want to miss out on that opportunity. And that is That is one of the reasons. Second is by being partners with a big established conglomerate like Reliance, it gives them a chance to play in that market. So it is more a partnership rather than trying to do it alone, which may be far more difficult. And that is why companies like Facebook are investing in Reliance, and we may have somebody else invest in Airtel and Vodafone and other assets.
But what needs to happen for it to be a win-win situation? I mean, we've seen a rush for India's telecom. Back in the 90s, we saw the likes of British Telecom, Telecom Italia all coming in, but, you know, they got burned. What needs to happen for it to be win-win?
Yeah, you know, from a telecommunication standpoint, there was a perceived gold rush between late 90s to maybe 2010. And we had far too many operators competing for a very small piece of the pie. But, you know, I think as we look at digital services, we are, yes, there will be a lot of casualties, as is the case we have seen with global digital businesses, where, you know, there are a few companies who will end up being successful, who will having a majority of the share. So that inherent risk is not going to go away. I think the opportunity, though, is that the market is at a less than 5% penetration for any of the digital services when you compare it with markets like China. So when they view the opportunity vis-a-vis that, then it becomes a lot more easier decision. From a regulatory standpoint, you are right. I think it is very hard to predict in today's global world order, where governments and countries are looking inwards more than outwards. So that risk will continue to be there, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Manoj, we concentrate a lot on Jio and these other companies which are investing there in that company. But what other companies or in the internet space are you finding very exciting there in India?
You know, so couple of areas. One, digital education, right? Companies like Baiju. What we have seen happen in the last 15 weeks or so is that the consumption of internet has moved away just from the big metros to now across the length and breadth of the nation. So things like digital education, online learning, e-learning are now growing rapidly in tier 2, tier 3 cities and the villages of India. Streaming platforms, you know, when we think of streaming platforms globally, we think of, you know, Disney and Disney Plus and Netflix. What we have seen in the last maybe 15 weeks or so is the growth and accelerated growth of many localized streaming platforms in different provinces of India. So you have a streaming platform just in a small province which has 30-40 million people catering effectively to the needs of that province. So we have seen a spurt of these kind of companies come along. Digital payments have received a tremendous boost in the same time as well. Online gaming and online gaming in particular has also seen a lot of uptake with people spending time indoors. So, you know, in that sense, this COVID-19 has been a real accelerator for all of these digital businesses,
Manoj,
from education to, healthcare. Yeah.